So beware of Jingles because he's mischief. Mischief incarnate. Also Mary Dash. I'm just checking. Not Jingles. Me as a human man. I am Mary Dash. Jingles is a fictional character. So don't get the two mixed up.
God.
Welcome to the Casuals of Runeterra, episode 12. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hetch.
Thank you for keeping me on after I staged a coup to take over the podcast. I appreciate it. You're too cool to me.
I'm a forgiving king. But no, that was a good episode. That was a good twist on things.
Yeah, I'm glad to hand the reins back to the true leader, though.
You crushed it, though, man. I may be out of a job.
Yay! Thank you.
But yeah, let's get into housekeeping. As always, you can listen to us anywhere. Follow us on Twitter. Keep up to date on the episodes there. That's your best shot. It's at Podcast Core, which is podcast COR. And you can send emails to podcastcore@gmail.com, spelled the same way. And then leave likes, follows, short reviews, comments. You know the usual. Hit the bell. I think there's bells everywhere now. I think everything has a concept of a bell. Do that.
Hit the bell, hit the whatever to make sure that we hit you back. And then we just start a nice
not in these dark times. No domestic violence.
My bad. And make sure to leave 5-star reviews with a comment of a star emoji so that we're 6 stars.
The 6-star podcast. We need to get like a quote, at the end of a commercial where it shows, the title card and it shows quotes from all the publications. We just want to say like New York Times, the first 6-star podcast.
Just put like under it like a made up name as a critic, and it's like so and so gave this 3 thumbs up.
Exactly. So for this episode, tell a friend to pop some shrooms and grab their podcast contraption and tune in to the Casuals of Runeterra.
Please use stuff responsibly. Don't be idiots out there.
Wait, not children. Children don't do drugs.
Do not implicate us in any of your experiments.
Like the Casuals told me to do drugs.
The Casuals, it was
it's
them.
Not my fault, Mom. So as usual, the last couple episodes, my deck has been kind of lackluster. I've been letting you all down. I haven't got to play as much as I want, which I know I keep saying that. But the time I have been playing, I've been trying to get my deck to where I want it to be more competitive. I feel like it's sitting in this like tier 2 range. I'm just pushing it and seeing if I can figure out this Freljord thing with Overwhelm. But we had a meta shift.
Did we ever?
So
Holy cow.
I got the double middle finger there, and my deck essentially became obsolete the moment that hit because it was trying to solve problems that no longer exist. You guys know how meta shifts work. So now I'm pivoting, if you will, to a new business strategy. And we'll see how it works out. So hopefully next episode I can come back and say, hey, I made a tier 1 deck. I don't know. I can dream, right? It's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work to maybe I'm being stubborn, but I think there's something there, and I don't see anybody else going down that route.
I mean, I'm always over here saying, don't let your meme be dreams, and you're not even trying to work off of a meme. So keep at it. Like, I'm proud of you. What do
you got, though? You got something special and episode related.
Okay, so...
Because you loved listeners, as you stated in the last episode. Or episode
I love you guys. I love you guys so much. I've got really frustrated with a few of my experiments and then also a meta shift on top of it. So like I'm going to have to go back and really readjust things. Yeah. So instead of trying to really deal with fun things that I want to do, I just said, you know what? I'm on this crazy losing streak again. I'm just going to play like my Catter Day. I'm going to build the Catastrophe. And anytime I lose, I'm going to blame the fact that I'm playing Catastrophe. But I mean, I'm still having a blast with it, but it definitely came out of just frustration of just like, screw it, I'm going to go have fun.
And you mentioning Saturday, is so related to what we're going to talk about in Fate of the Game section, right? Where it's this singleton concept, right? The Highlander decks that you see in so many different card games is something that it seems like Riot is pushing towards with their new mode that's coming out, and we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're playing Catterday is like, hey, you're kind of prepping for the future.
I was ready.
You're thinking you're space-minded.
And before I move off of that, if there's anyone afraid that the laboratory is hitting pause, the pause ain't going to last long, because that's just how I have fun. So I've got some dumb stuff in the works.
And I want to state again, because you're starting to see it a lot. Jeff Hoagland just tweeted, which was huge. Obviously, Magic player. Most people, if you play it, are familiar with him. Great streamer. He mentioned how now he's putting up VOD soon of him playing Legends of Runeterra. And I was like, what? And he's always been a guy who never just sticks to Magic and says Magic is God. Like, Magic is his game. Magic is his job. But he always dips his toe in all the other ones. And he is super impressed with the financial side of things and how they're handling the collections. And he's a very outspoken guy. So that's another person, is glad to have on the team.
I mean, it's growth of content creation, and that's really going to be a great way to just even get more players coming in, because a lot of it, I have friends that I know that are just like, I kind of want to get into this, but I'd rather watch someone play first. And you can't get better than like one of the most renowned Magic players just kind of jumping over. Like,
keep coming, send them all.
They already have a mindset of how to play a card game.
Come on, Watson, keep doing
most
it.
People.
We'll see if Hasbro gets smartens up before it's not just toys that go away.
Hasbro, if you're listening to this, we will be your mediators. All right,
we will take all sponsorships.
Yeah, we got the guy that created Ledros fired. So we got power. We'll help you, Hasbro.
So let's get into it. Main topic. By the title, which I didn't mention this time, right? I missed that one. Tiny Terrors. That one's kind of easy. It's kind of a given because we don't have many of the Yordle kind at this moment. But we are talking about two of the main ones, two OGs from the game.
Oh yeah, we're going into some of the most loved and hated characters of all League of Legends today. What a time!
And this is going to be interesting because. Usually we talk about, specific cards and then we talk about the champions, but these two champions haven't been technically updated completely when it comes to lore. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the cards themselves and what we've actually learned from Runeterra versus what we learned from League, because League hasn't updated their content. So there's some things like you guys know that with the cards, they implement a lot of lore with the quotes and with the art. So we're using that towards our advantage. So mine is to Teemo. So the spell I'm going to start off with today is Mushroom Cloud, which is, nothing special, but it's self-explanatory. It's a 1-cost burst spell that plants 5 poison puff caps on random cards in the enemy deck. And what that means is it introduces this cool mechanic for Teemo that whenever you draw, you have damage that could possibly be attached to that card. So it could be if it's 1 puff cap, you take 1 damage. If it's 2 puff caps, you take 2 damage. And then you essentially stack that up over the course of the game is kind of the strategy there. And I think that's a very interesting concept because in Magic, it's very rare to have cards that deal, like how it's set up in Magic is usually it will deal based on your opponent drawing. Like if your opponent draws a card, you deal a damage, right? And those cards are few and far between, and usually they're meant more for the casual side, like the commander side of things, versus the actual competitive play. So to see this be kind of the main mechanic of the champion and his cards is kind of cool.
As someone who built a commander deck entirely around that, yes. There's very few far
that was
between.
Me tossing it over to
and
the command. I need more of the man master here.
Also, with the puff caps, it abuses one of the facts of a digital card game that a physical card game can't get, which is random cards in the opponent's deck. Mm-hmm. Like you could get like that, as many card game players will say, that nut draw of putting puff caps in the deck, and it'll be like 5 puff caps on 1 card.
Yeah.
And they hit that 1 card and they just die.
Yep.
And it's like that's something that you can't recreate in a physical card game. So I love this take because it's such a creative way to bring a mechanic that is familiar to a lot of different card games while being unique to itself.
Yeah, and it has a sense of RNG that's not abusive, right? Because even now with Plunder, if you draw their card and it has a puff cap on it, you take damage. So like that kind of cute stuff is that's the cool stuff that Riot's doing to kind of mix
challenge to our listeners. I'll be the first to do this. So I'll be the first one to leave that comment. Comment on our Twitter if you have killed yourself with your own puff cap while building Plunder decks, because I'm raising my hand right now. Yeah. I've done that.
And the casuals of Runeterra always says, don't get high on your own supply.
On your own supply.
We're so soon.
We're so soon. So I'm coming in today as far as talking about Heimerdinger, but I also want to point out just a card that's been a staple for Piltover and Zaun decks, just period.
Control.
For control, it is Progress Day. So 8 mana, burst speed, draw 3 cards, and reduce those cards' cost by 1. And holy cow, like as far as for control, this is like the go-to card. Like if you are in Piltover and Zaun and you're playing control, this is an automatic at least one of. Yeah. And some decks, like, because I know a lot of people when they were first trying to build around Twisted Fate when he came out, it was like, put 3 of these suckers in it because that's 3 ticks towards his level up. But the Progress Day, outside of it being a cool card, the reason I did want to bring it up is since we're really diving into Piltover and Zaun today, the lore around just Progress Day. Like Progress Day is a huge holiday and celebration in the city of Piltover. And it's also a celebration that spans all of Runeterra as far as just I almost went to say notoriety, but it's not like a bad thing. Like it's kind of like the Rio de Janeiro or
it was
festival.
Like World of Tomorrow. Yeah. You're talking about the thing that happened back in like I can't remember when.
Yeah,
where they got to see like the next big TV and like all these things that people came from around.
Yeah, but it's this is like one of those big celebrations that does go across the world, like Oktoberfest. Like in Brazil, what is it, Rio de Janeiro? I think
possibly.
If we have any Brazilian fans, I'm sorry that I've turned you off to our show.
I have Brazilian blood. My last name is is Portuguese, but whatever.
Yeah, but
that doesn't hold me to anything. I'm not responsible.
Yeah, but, it's one of those festivals that is worldwide. Like even if you don't celebrate it in your country, you know of it, and we get to see that in Runeterra. Like if you,
it's like Eurovision.
As someone who has played Lux with literally every region combination. When you play Progress Day and Lux is on the board, she's like, "Can every day be Progress Day?" And she's from Demacia.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's this. I love that it's a go-to card for a region that is also so deeply tied to its lore. And maybe in this episode, maybe next episodes, we can really get into that. So
yeah, and this takes us to our followers now. And mine, so obviously I'm sticking with this theme of the poison caps or the puff caps, because it asks, we have a very interesting question here, is where do puff caps come from? How does this underground system work? Is it a drug or is it a tool? Where does it go? Because you have this sense of people who are around puff caps that get affected by just like the essence of them mentally. But then you also have the sense that they're used like weapons and they're bought on the black market. The black puff market. I don't know what they call it.
The puff market.
The puff market. But Chump
Black Caps.
The Black Caps. But Chump Wump's an interesting card. It's like, once again, an OG as far as, the short lifespan that Runeterra has had, or Legends of Runeterra has had. And it caused a lot of trouble because it used to have 4 health. So now it's a 4 cost 4/3. that when it comes into play, it creates 2 mushroom clouds in your hand. And the benefit of that is like the thickness of the body. And I say the thickness of the body. And in the quote, they talk about Chump Wump and how she's heavy as a horse and as crafty as a krug. But no, so, Mushroom Cloud is also a card, you talked about control decks and Progress Day. It's a card that's also used for like discard strategies, right? To say it's cheap, it costs 1. So if you need to use it, you can, but you can also very easily discard it because you're essentially getting it for free. So you're using it to essentially cash in for bigger, better cards.
Yeah, and it's not even a bad payoff if you're not discarding it, because most discard decks are highly aggressive. So that's potentially 5 damage that you're adding to your utility. This is the face of the followers for Piltover-Zaun. I feel confident in saying that.
Yeah, and in the little bit of cards that are associated with Teemo, it's cool to think how many of those cards are used in so many different styles of decks when you're playing PZ. So I think that's a good sign of the usefulness of his cards, even though he's not used as much, which is, it varies because you kind of got to commit to him. But what do you got for us? I'll get back to Chump Wump and the whole conspiracy I'm building towards here.
Yeah. There's a lot to dig into, and it's like digging through the CIA history. There's just a bunch of block
dossiers redacted.
Okay, that I can't go into this with bringing 2 serious additions. So let's talk about the Submersible. I'll just go ahead and open with the card. 5 mana, 1/5 with elusive. And when I'm summoned, draw 1. Then if you've played at least 10 other cards with different names, grant me +4/+0. So if you've played 10 cards of different names, it's a 5/5. Which gameplay wise, there's some decks that could pull this off without even trying to build towards the singleton format. So it is a good card. It's also a body that lets you draw a card too. So it cycles itself. Yeah. So overall, this is a good addition into that whole idea of building around it. But I wanted to bring it up because this is a theme that we're going to see a lot the further that we dig through Piltover-Zaun. And that is just, what the hell? Is that a cat driving a submarine? What? Am I having a stroke? And if you try to read on the card art, it doesn't answer any questions. Nothing could stop his escape from those simpering humans. Not even a little water this summer.
And the fact that they have, simp here, that's very modern. That Riot is ahead of the game. Like, that's a word that's getting a lot more used, getting more popular. And here it is in a quote. It's like they read the tea leaves.
Oh, they knew. I think Simpsons fans are going to get in on this. The Matt Groening time traveler conspiracy. I think Matt Groening's working with was working with Riot right now.
Oh my god,
I'm angry. And that's a common theme of PNZ is just what the hell?
So to that card, the whole Highlander thing becoming, obviously there's a lot of different things you can do in Runeterra already. I know I keep saying Runeterra, that's the way I like to shorten it. So you know what I'm talking about. But the thing is, Highlander adds a level of complexity to the strategy side of things because it's very hard to play against. It's hard to play one, right? Because you have one-ofs and you really have to pick and choose what moments things are good in. And then you have the playing against it aspect where it's hard to read somebody's deck if you don't know. Because usually you see a card, you're like, oh yeah, they have 3 copies of that, right? Because it's crucial to the deck. In Highlander decks, that's not the case. You kind of got to figure out the pace of the game and play accordingly and try to get them to misplay, right? Like anything. But I think that's going to be cool when if it does become more popular. Or become a staple to be a part of the overall meta.
I have thoughts to get into it with that, but we will get into that later. Because I've got thoughts.
I've got thoughts. So let's move into Teemo, man. All right, so the murderous psycho himself. So this is the thing about Teemo, and one disclaimer is, through my research, through my reading, one thing I came across was TB Skyen, who he does a lot of videos. He's been doing videos for a while as far as just straight up lore, asking a lot of questions, and he has very funny videos. But one thing he had in one of his Teemo videos where he talked about how Teemo's a great character, but he is an OG and he hasn't really had an updated lore. And with new Yordles coming out, or Yordles having their lore updated and him not being referenced in any fashion, it's weird to find out where he fits, right? So in his story, you have mention of Megalings, which is now retconned. They don't exist anymore. That group doesn't exist anymore. A lot of things about Bandle City as treated as an actual zone or place, even though we now know it's like a world between worlds. It's like this fairy zone that's only accessible at certain times during history, and only Yordles can get there. So the fact that his lore focuses so much on him being this scout or this military operative for a city that no one can get to or attack makes no sense, right? It's like, why would he need to do any of that? So he started that thought process of like, okay, well, you don't need special forces for this city that nobody can get to. They have nobody attacking them, or no one can attack them effectively unless it's like some old god situation. But then you don't need Teemo. Puff caps aren't going to deal with like Ursine, right? And then there's nothing to defend there. And then typically what we've had so far, like we talked about Fizz, right, is your Yordles usually find a culture, they become a part of that culture, they assimilate, and then they adopt the ideals of that culture to blend in, right?
Yeah, and it goes with like the whole retcon thing, because Yordles got redefined as being a spirit entity.
Yeah.
And that's also shown with Bandle City, the retcon there. So Teemo used to be like the face of what a Yordle looks like.
Yeah.
And then now we're getting retcon and learning more that Yordles can be a whole range of different appearances.
Exactly. And even further, you have like the jungles of Kumungu, which is a great name, that don't exist, but that's where he hangs out, right? Or don't exist yet, as we know. And then Tristana's mentioned as like his best friend, but when Tristana had her updates, there's no mention of him. So it's like, right, all right. So what do we have here? So we look at the card, right? So Teemo is a 1-cost 1/1, which is, I think he's the lowest cost champion. And he has Elusive, Nexus Strike, plant 5 poison caps on random cards in the enemy deck. We talked about what those puff caps do. And then once you've planted 15 or more puff caps, he flips and turns into a 2/2, which every time he strikes the Nexus, he doubles the amount of puff caps in the enemy deck. So huge, right? If you can get him to flip fairly quickly to take over the match. But the thing I looked at here mainly was the quotes, right? So it talks about a couple Bandle Scout rules. And from those rules, we find out that Teemo is a vegetarian, Teemo is adventurous, and Teemo is a menace and kills without remorse. And those are the only 3 things that I think currently define Teemo. And it's going to be a hard, Skyen mentioned this, and definitely go check out that video. I don't have the exact name here. I'll put in the show notes for the YouTube video, but check it out because it makes you think about how are they going to integrate him and where are they going to put him? Because currently he's a part of PZ, but based on what I've seen, it seems like he's just currently around PZ. But like where he's coming from and who he's working for per se, I don't think that's where his affiliation lies.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting too, because like what does this mean for Bandle City as well? Like it's less of a thing of like where to put Teemo, because like we kind of like they put Teemo in P and Z. So do we retcon Teemo, or are we going to see kind of like what they've done with team fight tactics, where champions are repeated except with their different in-game skins for League of Legends, and they have different effects depending on what skin they wear. Yeah. Because if they implement that, like that opens a whole can of worms of things that they could do for fun, so like a whole arcade set. They could do the Star Guardian thing, so all the Sailor Moon fans, totally not me, can go crazy.
I think we've already outed ourselves a long time ago. This is episode 12, Hitch.
I don't know what you're talking about.
They know what the deal is. But this kind of takes us to our next Yordle, right?
Yeah. And up next, let me hear it in the chat. Let's go crazy. Raise those dongers.
Yeah.
All right.
I wish
It's
I
the
had my dongers here.
Heimerdinger himself. And I'll open up with the card here because like Heimerdinger is suffering a lot from like the same issue as Teemo, where they haven't been retconned yet.
Mhm.
And so as far as Heimerdinger the card, he's a 5-mana champion with 1 attack, 3 toughness, and when you cast a spell, create a fleeting turret in hand with equal cost. It costs 0 this round, and he levels up when you've summoned 12 plus power of turrets.
Mhm.
And his level up is +1/+1, and turrets that you create get +1/+1. And the turrets is a whole can of worms to go through because there is a different turret for every mana cost, and 0 mana included. There is a turret with Challenger, a turret with Fear, a turret with First Strike, a turret
There's
with
something
Elusive.
for everyone. Come to Progress Day.
Progress. So the Heimerdinger is one of the most ridiculous value engines in Runeterra, period. The value of Heimerdinger is potentially endless. Like if you go in uninterrupted, it's just going to be how many cards are left in your deck, and that's how much value you get. And it's like, if I draw out, I guess I lose. But like, enough about the card. Like, it does kind of set the stage as far as for Heimerdinger, because he is just known as a borderline mad scientist. And I have to emphasize borderline because Heimerdinger grants a very good picture of someone who is highly respected in the city of Piltover, but he's dancing this fine line of being eccentric to mad. And he looks at everything with such scrutiny, and he looks at everything to every single minor detail that he kind of shows where that line is that has created Piltover and Zaun. So Piltover and Zaun, as far as in the lore, they are 2 separate cities, but Piltover is a surface dwelling city, and Zaun is the city under Piltover. And Piltover is a city that praises ingenuity and the advancement of technology. So every one of its citizens are working towards some goal, working towards trying to build something that will become the next change to technology that Runeterra knows. I think like the best way to try to explain that, if I'm going to show my other nerd side here, it would be like the city of Alexandria, which after Alexander the Great conquered the city, or conquered like the Egyptian Empire, he was moving to try to create a city that was only trying to progress towards a intellectual development. So that's why the Library of Alexandria is one of the most famous centers of knowledge that we know historically, even though we have nothing left of it because Rome burnt it to the ground.
Don't burn libraries. Don't do that.
Don't burn libraries. Just let us have our books, dude.
It's a bad look.
Like, look, I get it. We're on the internet and stuff, but if like all of the lore just disappeared, like, what would I read? Please, just keep the books safe.
Keep the books safe.
So that is Piltover. Piltover is a city that is constantly trying to advance, and in its advancement, all of the waste of the city is filtered out and shot down into the ground, into caverns that the city was built upon. And it is there that the city of Zaun, or the undercity of Zaun, thrives. And its denizens are people that learn to thrive off of the byproducts of Piltover. Like, they were able to take the pollution essentially of Piltover and turn it into usable resources. And that's where we get characters like Kimpunk, like the Kimpunk gangs. And we get to see a lot of that in the cards already, which we will talk about with other champions, not with Heimerdinger, but they Zaun is also where the rejects of Piltover go. So if you start really delving into the study of what
some
these
would say mentally unstable,
it's like, what can I make out of these mushrooms? And then you realize that you're making something that Teemo would use. You get kicked out of Piltover into Zaun. And that is like the yin and yang that is Piltover and Zaun. So it makes sense that they combine these two regions together, even though it gives them like a huge champion pool to work off of for one region. But I kind of went on that because Heimerdinger is the face of Piltover.
Yep.
And that is, there's no one that screams Piltover more than Heimerdinger.
And like one thing I like is we get a sense of his personality from his journal. Like the side, they said it's a side story, but it's a log of his journal. And at the end, the way he looks at things, the way he solves problems is dangerous, right? It's the Zaun part of his personality, where he's looking at it from a kind of like through a lens of creativity and problem solving, but he goes straight to human testing. Like there's no, Heimer doesn't have like levels of, passing phases and getting FDA approval. He gets it done. And
what's approval,
right? If it works, it works. But if not, we'll try again. And we get a hint at Fizz, him coming across Fizz as a young child and taking him in almost like a, a sensei mentor type position.
Yeah, and his journal also shows that like there are more Yordles than in Piltover. Like the Yordles are such a curious group and mischievous that Piltover and Zaun is a city that they're very comfortable in going to, because that lets them kind of play with their mischievousness. Yeah. You brought up his journal. At the end of that, we see a League of Legends champion, Rumble, who is not in Runeterra yet.
Yeah.
But, there's a connection already there. And I was going to read a quick little excerpt from his journal to give an idea of just how crazy Heimerdinger is, because from the journal, it's while returning home after today's test, I passed a gaggle of young Yordles throwing a spherical projectile at each other. It's a simple enough concept. Throw the object at someone, catch it, throw it at another Yordle, repeat. But Yordle miscalculations result in several errors. They throw with inconsistent accuracy and force, and the ball, as they refer to it, is frequently dropped. There are many ways for this process to be improved. And this is how he creates the iconic turret that he uses to kill people in League of Legends. Heimerdinger.
Listen, most good inventions were mistakes. They were made with intent to make something else.
Yeah, so I'm sure like when we can really break down into like character stories, there's going to be more of Heimerdinger, but today it's like, since he hasn't been retconned yet, it's more.
Yeah, we'll probably come back to these two.
Let's talk about the cities. Yeah, that's more interesting to me.
We'll come back to these two in due time. But that does take us to the fate of the game portion of the episode.
Fate of the game.
And this one's pretty juicy. We've had a lot of stuff happen. So we had a big patch. We've kind of already talked about that a bit, right? And in that time frame, we also got a video that showed us a what's next for Runeterra, where they gave us a further out view, right? That 200-yard view of things. And they mentioned a good couple of stuff. So like they mentioned one more region happening this year, 2 regions next year, and then new cards every 2 months is what they're shooting for. And on top of that, they mentioned 2 modes, which one is like called the Gauntlet, and it's more of a challenger style / puzzle style, which I've mentioned on Reddit that would be cool if we had something like that. It's reminiscent of when you start the game, how it puts you through these scenarios, these situational obstacles you have to get past to beat that and get the reward. I think that's a cool thing to do in the game. So I'm happy to bring more of that style. And then they mentioned an experimental style of mode that allows them to do more freedom-based beta testing stuff with, they could be like, okay, well now we're increasing card caps to 4 instead of 3. Like you can have 4 of each card. Or we may increase the health pool that you start with. Or we may change how many cards you start with in the game, right? Those kind of things they can mess with And it's reminiscent of what they've been doing with Overwatch, where they have these arcade modes now that have completely different buffs and debuffs for characters so they can try it out before they say, okay, we're going to try to push this to live, right? So I think it's cool. And then events, they said events, like kind of more loose, but we think they mean tournaments. And that would be kind of cool because they did mention the spectator mode and spectator capabilities. So what do you think about all that?
Spectator is already like the most hype thing.
Yeah, you need it
for me. That's the biggest thing for me was spectating, because there'll be times that you get on and you want to just challenge a friend and they're in a game. I don't want to jump in a game yet, so let me just watch. That's a quality of life buff that's just big 2 thumbs up from me.
How do you feel about the rest of the stuff?
So I'm not gonna lie. All right.
I hope you've never lied to me. Oh no!
He'll never know. Smash that dislike. Okay,
smash that dislike button.
But I'm not gonna lie. Like I played League of Legends for so long that, especially with the things that they are that they're saying that there's their game plan, I do like how much they're revealing to us, like, because it's over a year's worth of planning, and so I do like seeing that. But my knee-jerk reaction is very afraid that it's going to fall flat on its face, because that's when they implemented a lot of different fun event style things for League of Legends back in like 2013, 2014. They were okay. They needed work. They didn't get the work they needed, so then they ended up being fun for a week and then fell on their face. Yep. And then
you gotta support those modes,
yeah. And Riot continued supporting the professional scene, and so then it was now I think the biggest change. It's been a while since I played League, but I think one of the biggest changes was that one of these modes was Earth mode, which was ultra rapid fire mode, and Earth mode got put in as a permanent play mode that you can queue into. That's happening like 6 years after the point I'm saying, and then like they have made changes to make it a little more fun, but
that's 6 years.
That's 6 years. Like
that's a whole new whole new
you're
titles,
not Half-Life. You're not Half-Life 3, all right? Like,
well, nothing is. We're still waiting.
And so like my knee-jerk reaction is hesitant and a little fearful, but I've been enjoying the way they've been handling the game, and they have consistently proven my fear wrong. Okay. So I'm definitely going to have hope that this stuff is going to be fun, because I mean, you mentioned I'm a big Commander player. I love playing Commander, and I'm a very casual player in that, so I don't have a $5,000 deck. Please don't mug me. But like seeing things that are fun and clever ways to play a card game is always fun for me. So I'm looking forward to it.
So, hold on to that fear. Don't just let it go that quickly, because we're at that point in the episode.
I can't let go.
Where I have a little something for you, Hatch. Today, okay, so today's not crazy. It is a little deep, so you might take some time. So you're transported to Runeterra. Okay. But you're no longer a Hedge. You're now a Yordle. So what you have to do is you have to choose your name. Okay. And you have to create your lore. And you have to choose which region you decide to assimilate. So for me, because I'll go first and give you some time, my name is Jingles. And as Jingles, because you guys know I love Freljord, Ash is my wife, so we'll go there. And as I assimilate, my whole thing is I wear bells in a extravagant way so that I make no noise, even though I'm covered in bells. And my whole thing is I bring presents around Freljord and at random moments, but it's a blend of Western Santa and Krampus. So when you open your present, you never know what you might get, because you don't know how good you were or how bad you were. So beware of Jingles, because he's mischief. Mischief incarnate. Also married to Ash. I'm just joking. Not Jingles. Me as a human man, I am married to Ash. Jingles is a fictional character. So don't get the two mixed up. All right, Hedge. What do you got?
Right.
This is probably the toughest one yet. There's a lot here.
Yeah. So my name. Okay, my name is
Suka Slim Shady.
Yeah. Yeah, so my name is going to end up being Fluffers the Great.
Okay, Fluffers the Great. Okay.
Fluffers the Great, all right? And so I'm clearly, as far as my appearance, I'm going to be a very fluffy looking Yordle.
Yeah.
All right. And I am going to be in the region of Demacia.
Okay. Hanging out with Poppy.
Fluffers the Great is the strongest Yordle warrior in his own mind. But it turns out that Fluffers the Great has been blessed.
Yeah.
Has been blessed as far as just contact with growing up in Bandle City and contact with different magical forces. He's been blessed with an ability of being very tough. But he thinks that he is the strongest. So he is in Demacia, and he is constantly breaking into the Laurent estate and challenging people to duels and losing over and over again. But he's always back the next day, miraculously uninjured.
So he has Demacian heart. He just doesn't have the training.
No, but in his mind, he is the best swordsman, swords Yordle, to ever live.
That's pretty good.
Fluffers the Great.
You showed up. Fluffers the Great. All right. I mean, I get to hang out with Cervantes. But, maybe we might cross paths. Maybe in later episodes. What if we did an episode where both the champions are made-up Yordle personality?
Dude, we could go ahead. We could write a comic as far as how our Yordle champions meet.
Jingles and Fluffers.
Jingles and Fluffers.
Oh man, we're doing it.
They try to fight to the death, and Cervantes breaks it up.
We've already stated that we are the biggest influence on this game. So that being said, thanks as always for listening. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Goodbye, everybody.